The GST rates were hiked on several items at the 47th Council meet chaired by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman last month in Chandigarh. In this edition of the discourse, we'll analyze the new items that have been brought under the GST regime, where the GST regime is at, and what next. Joining me on the program today are Vinita Hariharan, public policy expert, and Ajay Shankar, former Secretary, Government of India. Thank you to both my guests for joining me on this edition of the discourse. Vinita Hariharan, let me bring you into the picture now. And since we're looking at the larger picture, let's understand another aspect. Something that Mr. Shankar brought up as well. I'd like to build on that. He spoke up about the circumstances under which these particular goods and items were brought under the ambit of the GST, especially the essential goods. What does this say about the state of the economy and the state's finances as a whole?
Yeah, I think first of all, we need to clarify that it's not brought. These are not brought now under the GST. These are the categorization is important to note. I'm sure viewers would have read between the lines. It is about pre-packaged, items, pre-packaged and labeled, which is as per the Legal Metrology Act of 2009, which actually defines it very clearly as to these essential items like cereals, rice, wheat, flour, etc., which is not packed in front of the consumer. So, which is not packed in front of the consumer, but it's predefined in weight and size, and also it has a label in terms of the manufacturing date and the license, etc. Those have now come under the ambit of the GST. So, which is actually based on various industry associations and suppliers' complaints that went up to the Fitment committee. So it was a position taken by the Fitment committee, which comprised various states. So this is actually about plugging the loopholes in the tax, in the value chain of the tax net, so to speak. So earlier it was just the branded, manufacturers which came under the ambit of the GST, but there was a lot of tax evasion there. So, but now there would be also the unbranded ones, which has a label and which has a packaging in terms of even if it's not sealed, those come under the ambit of the GST. So, and this is not something new. It's not that all essential items have suddenly come under the ambit of GST. So earlier states were also imposing VAT on these items, like Punjab and Uttar Pradesh, were gaining substantially by imposition of VAT on these items in bulk, like rice and flour, etc. So it's not something new that the government has announced. It is just about streamlining rationalizing the entire process of tax collection across the value chain. And there would also be input tax credit that could be availed by various actors along the supply chain. So that is to clarify and put the facts right, which I'm sure viewers who have read and researched would know this, but it's important to put it up front on your show. And regarding the second point of what Ajayji just mentioned, yes, it's about also correcting the entire process of GST collection, because GST itself is undergoing a lot of streamlining over the years, and it's a very successful case study of the government of India, which where the record collections have happened in GST, and so this is a very big revenue source for the government. Which is not unduly so, because it's also being shared between the center and the states. So the states' eternal complaint that they're not receiving their share is wrong, because the center has been giving the devolution of the shares to the states. And so this is all a process of increasing the collection of the tax revenues for the central government as well as for the state government, and also plugging the loopholes. It's part of all the tax. It's part of actually correcting all the tax evasion that has been happening traditionally across the value chain. So, and also this government has also been very, the kind of budgeting and the kind of, introductions that have been happening are very reactive, and it's also very dynamic. The process of, the reactions of the government to various issues have been dynamic. And so that's the method that actually the government of India is following in their budgeting processes as well. So, which is why it is agile and it's able to react to various situations that happen, time and again, like various crises in the COVID period. We could actually bring in interim budgets, which is all in reaction to the externalities. So, which is a very dynamic and new method of budgeting and economic reactions of the government of India. And as far as state governments are concerned, yes, many state governments have to improve their finances and their, their sources of revenue. They need to be more creative in and also to identify the eligible sources of revenue. Like many of the state governments, like Kerala, etc., they don't have any, creative sources of revenue except liquor and lottery and petroleum cess. So they need to improve their, industry taxes. They need to improve taxes on various other things like the fishery sector, the cooperative sector, etc., which Gujarat is very good in imposing and in actually collecting revenues. So if you compare states like Gujarat and Kerala in terms of their state, even the state revenue of the GST collections in Gujarat is very high, whereas a state like Kerala, they're failing in their collection of the state GSTs. So it's all about improving the efficiency of collection of GST. So even here now, it has to be monitored very effectively because it's a very, very fine, element that has been brought in, which is called pre-packaging and label. So that monitoring aspect, the government would have to be very careful in how it actually calibrates this and imposes this tax.
Right, absolutely. All right, we'll get into a section now where we get questions from our viewers. Let's take a question that is coming from Soumya Bharadwaj. Let me share it on our screen as well at the moment right now. So, Vinita, I'd like to take this up with you. You know, we've had about 47 meetings really as far as the GST Council is concerned. It has now been in effect for a few years, 5 years now. So what are some of the key achievements and are we heading in the right direction as far as the GST is concerned?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we all, we've witnessed the kind of track record that the GST has gained and the traction that GST has gained over the period of time. So when it was first introduced, we remember the overnight meeting that happened, night-long meeting that happened on the GST Council, the very first meeting. So it was announced by the earlier regime, but it was actually got implemented in this current regime. And we've seen how it has progressed over a period of time and how efficiently and how well it has been implemented. The efficacy of it is displayed very well. And in such a large country like India, with the scale and size of 28 states and eight union territories, and the way it's been implemented, I think is remarkable. And the kind of the collection that is the whopping collection that the government is receiving through the GST regime itself, through the GST itself, is quite good and substantially, it has improved over a period of time. And so I think this is a major source of revenue for the government, not only for the central government, but also the state governments which have fallen in line and which have also, in accordance with the central government's pace, improved their pace of collection and efficiency. I think they've also gained substantially from this. And so I think it has been streamlined considerably. And various other items have come under the GST after a lot of calibration and a lot of consultation with states. So it's also not that it's been imposed indiscriminately. It has been done in consultation with various states because the fitment committee itself comprises of representatives from various state governments, from various political parties. So I think it's a very a good example of how a vast democracy like India, challenged democracy like India, is able to implement such kind of a uniform tax structure, which is so important for our rationalization of our budget and for collection of taxes, which eventually go into welfare programs of the government of India, which is why the government of India is robust today in terms of giving out benefits to the people in reaction to various crises like what we saw like during the pandemic when it all played out.
Right. Okay, since we are here now, let's get closing comments from both the panelists as well with the best way forward and what next. Where do we go from here? Right. And Vinita Hariharan, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think giving kudos to the government for the efficiency in which it's been implemented, but also not to be complacent, but look for things that could actually reduce pressures and inflation, like bringing the crude oil and bringing fuel prices under the net of the GST would be the next, I think, important aspect that the fitment committee should consider in consultation with states and keep on at it and try to pursue states to bring that under the GST regime. I think that will go a long way in reducing pressure to the end consumer. And so I think this is the way to go in terms of GST. I think implementation, it's a remarkable case study of a successful implementation of such a complicated tax regime in such a complicated country like India.
Right.
But I think going forward,
go
the
ahead.
states,
yes.
going forward, the states have to really monitor the aspect of collection of particularly this particular item of prepackaged, food items and labeled items. I think the monitoring mechanisms have to be very efficiently implemented.
Very true. Very true. Absolutely. That's something that needs to be kept in mind, and it has to be effective at the end of the day if you want to make it work on a large scale basis. All right, we'll have to leave to that. Thank you so much to both my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Ajay Shankar and Vinita Hariharan, a pleasure as always to have you on the program. Thank you.
Thank you.